Hey there. Happy Mother's Day. Sunday, May 10. Good morning, James. Good morning, all. Glad you guys could be here. Got the hummingbird cam up. Look at that. Look at that. That's pretty dope. I love that timing. Thank you, Mr. Hummingbird. I got the other one up too, but the squirrel does not like being watched, and he's torn into the cam, so the focus is off. So we won't be seeing this cam for a while. Yeah. So I want to talk about. I actually don't even know what I want to talk about. I have been finishing. You guys know that I pre-released the book, the Kindle book, Quantum Rapture, and I spent the last week basically prepping the paperback, designing the cover, going over last minute things, acknowledgments, things like that. Just a lot of prep for that. And I finally ordered my first copies last night. That would be for anyone that wants a signed copy, but they're still a few weeks away. And so if you want to order a signed copy of my new book, you can. It will take a few weeks. However, if you don't want to wait for a signed copy, here's a link to order a signed copy. I just pasted it in chat. Hello from Germany. But if you do not want to wait, you can actually order it right from Amazon right now. Like as of 2 hours ago, it just became possible to order the paperback on Amazon. You've been able to order the Kindle for a while, but you can now order the paperback. And I will stop talking about the book now. But man, I'm so excited about it. I hope you guys can give it a chance. So, monoatomic gold, manna. What is it? That's actually one of the Hebrew translations. The Golden Fleece, the bread of heaven. It's this weird thing that's in the Quran. It's not even weird. It's in the Quran. It's in the Bible. It's in Talmudic traditions. Spoke extensively about it. They actually even spoke about the problems on sustaining a healthy bowels when all you're eating is manna. Manna was something that was gathered in between the dew. It was said to fall on Gentile or Jew alike. However, it favored the Jews, the Israelis. It favored them. In fact, the holiest of holy was told, "You're the one that will have more manna in your yard in the morning." It would actually gather in the yard at night, and it would apparently go bad. Maggots could get into it. Therefore, you had to eat it every day. It was a daily bread. It was sometimes made into bread, many times made into bread. It was also drank. It was drank and eaten. It was every 6 days it would fall from heaven in the dew, and then on Saturday you would get a double supply that would fall, and then Sunday there would be nothing. But the Saturday supply was fortified with extra preservatives that somehow made it where it did not spoil. It's why is there such a specific talk about manna? Why is we think that inside the Ark of the Covenant was manna with Aaron's budding rod and the tablets of the Ten Commandments? There was manna in there. So what is it? It's really funny. That's literally one of the translations. It's a Hebrew word. They're saying, "Oh, manna means what is it?" So what is it? Our closest guess probably is some people call it orgone. It's a certain type of monoatomic metal. This is not the same as colloidal, although it's similar. It's a naturally occurring form of gold that you can find in lava secretions. You can find it at the bottom of seabeds, and apparently back then you would find it in the morning dew. You would collect it, a lot of it. You also didn't have to use the bathroom. If you were on a diet of manna, you stopped going to the bathroom entirely. You were also assigned to eat it every day. It's not almost, it was a prescription. They were prescribed manna. Like, I want you to go out in the wilderness, away from all other civilization. I want you to not eat anything else except for manna. And here's the rules: you have to eat it every day. Sunday, you don't have to eat it. I mean, you have to gather it and eat it every day. Sunday, I want you to chill. That's a chill day. It's like a cash day. But the rest of 6 days, this is being installed in you. Manna is being installed in you. This gold yeast. It's probably not even correct to call it yeast, but I'm going to get to yeast in a second. It's going to be installed in you so that you may receive the message, the Holy Spirit, the blessings, the instructions of the Lord, of God, of whichever name you want to apply to it. It was connected to your connection to God. Same thing in Egypt. It was everywhere in Egypt. It was a part of the diet. In fact, silver was more valuable in Egypt than gold was. It was everywhere. Cortez, when he attacked the Aztecs, they had no idea he wanted gold. That was the last thing that they understood. Their economy ran on cocoa beans. They were like the dark chocolate economy. They didn't understand why he was coming in for their gold. It had a different connotation. There's all kinds of talk now about orgone. It makes you levitate. It does this. It does that. It does all this interesting things. It's definitely would seem to be something to the idea of eating gold or eating silver, that would somehow change your electrical circuitry in your body in some way. And this is going to sound like really, really anti-Semitic. Let's pretend like that's a real thing, that there's actually this region that you can hate. And anyway, let's just get to it. What if the Grabbler wants gold? What if a fetish? Okay, so let's talk about fetish. First of all, fetish means this is a fetish. This is a wonderful fetish. One of you sent me this fetish. She might even be in here. This is a fetish. Why? Because it's sage with a string wrapped around it. That's all it takes to make a fetish. And when I burn this, I create a ritual, right? I create a magic ritual around me. And that ritual is transmuted. It allows me to have my thoughts, right, that are put into the sage. And now everywhere the smoke goes, my thought permeates the smoke. It permeates and conveys what my will is. My will is to cleanse. I cleanse all of you. I'm saging all of you. It's because I can see the breath that makes it more powerful. It's because I'm able to understand and see it. Gotta stop for the hummingbirds. Look at that. Yeah, I know. It's my food. This is why people are addicted to smoking, by the way. Why? Because when you smoke, you see your breath. And when you see your breath, you become conscious of your breath. And when you're conscious of your breath, you relax. You vasodilate. You chill. That's why sage works. Anything with smoke, anything ethereal, anything airish is going to work, because it's allowing you to see the ether around you. and to permeate what you see with your belief, with what your goal is. I want to bless this altar. And so manna acts as a monofilament that falls through the dew, which means it's in the air, and it's gathered and collected at night when it gets cool, and then that's ingested. It's permeated with something. That gold holds something, and whatever it holds, we eat, we ingest, or they eat, they ingest. So back to fetish. A fetish can be just a trinket. All right, I should have finished that thought. It can be just a trinket. Fetish isn't necessarily a bad word. However, in America, we have another word called fetish. And that is a fetish, a psychological addiction fetish, okay? That is when you've been given something that you think you need to survive, like manna. If you've been fed gold, if it's giving you insights, if the fasting is allowing you to see things that you could not normally see in the world, right? And if you're adding to it this gold manna, whatever it is, if that was to suddenly be gone, okay, if you were to live for 40 days and 40 nights, if you were to wander the desert for weeks and months, if you were to participate in an exodus and survive off nothing but this manna, and then that manna was to end, you would have the second definition of fetish. You would have this addiction for something that you think you need to survive. And if you watch my streams, we've talked about this. Most of your fetishes, most of your sexual fetishes, your psychological fetishes, your comfort fetishes, are all go back to things that happened to you where you lost something that you thought you needed to survive. And so you end up with an addiction for it. And maybe the reason why so many, I hope you guys don't mind, I'm using Owen's term grabblers because it's perfect. It's the perfect term for this. There's not a region, it's not a race, it's not even a religion, okay? It's a vacuous Wetiko that's inside a group of people that has been there for a long time. And all of us struggle with it. But there is a clear pattern, my friends. There's a clear pattern that there's a certain group of people out there that have a fetish for gold, that end up with all the gold, that collect the gold. And I'm trying as sensitively as I can to suggest to you that maybe that fetish was developed because of manna, because of this addiction that developed out of eating nothing but manna. And I've seen the same thing. I've seen it. You see it with any kind of drug that hits town, right? You see it with any kind of. The Beatles is a form of manna. Fashion is a form of manna. Education is a form of manna. Believing certain lies, believing certain propaganda is a form of manna. And then when it goes away, you end up with a fetish. Hummingbird food is a manna. The awesome colors on that guy. He's thirsty. So, if an addiction from gold comes from manna, it kind of opens up the entire history of what we're talking about in a lot of ways. It showcases, number one, why are there no pyramids in the Bible? If you were to have an addiction to manna, and you were to find that the supply was now limited, you would hoard that manna, you would hide where it came from, Who knows what would happen, right? Who knows? And so many stories could have been changed because of that fetish, because of that addiction. Exodus says the Israelites consumed the manna for 40 years. That's enough for a genetic addiction, right? Like, your alcoholic family has an alcoholic child, and that child has an alcoholic child until it's broken, until that addiction is broken. And it's just so interesting to me that most of us don't talk about this stuff. That this stuff isn't really in our normal daily vernacular. People aren't going around talking about this. It's not something we really discuss. Let's see, where is it in here? Let's see here. There it is. This is oh man, where did this come from? Isaiah? So the people rested on the seventh day. This is Exodus 31. Wait a minute. No, Exodus 16. 31. Verse 31. And the house of Israel called the name thereof Manna. And it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Let an omerful of it be kept throughout your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a jar, and put an omerful of manna therein, and lay it before the Lord, to be kept throughout your generations. Now, let's jump to the tabernacle in the wilderness. Inside the tabernacle is the outer gate, bronze adornments, blood sacrifice there. Inside the outer gate is the holy place, a wooden square rectangular long room, very tall ceilings, wrapped in gold, both sides. Inside of there, every item inside is made out of gold. But then on the right, on the table on the right, as you walk in to the left, you see the lamps, the menorah. You see a giant menorah. And then on the right, you have a table. And in the table are 12 loaves in 2 piles. And this is the shewbread, right? This is the bread that's given to all the priests, and they're required to eat it. Now, that shewbread is probably of the same manna. It's of the same element. And before we come back to the shewbread, let's go past this, because on the other side of the room is incense. An altar of incense is burning. Frankincense is in there. Gold is in there. That's all we know so far. And then you go into the Holy of Holies. Actually, only one of us goes in on Yom Kippur, one guy. Right? He wears the breastplate with all the jewels on his chest, all the different stones, elemental stones. He's got a string attached to him that links him to the door so they can pull him out if he dies or something. Like a safety rope, if you were to go into a radiation chamber, almost. Then you've got this sealed box, wood wrapped in gold on both sides, with a mercy seat that all of its parts correspond to parts in the body. The mercy seat is your spine. There's actually, if you look down in your sacrum, there's a mercy seat there. You have this entire electrical pyramid inside your spine. But inside this box, where the manna is, it radiates gold. There's no light coming in, but you don't need a light. The vapor cloud enough, right? As the ark went through the wilderness, what happened? A vapor cloud followed it. A tall, tall vapor cloud. And what did this box do? It would bequeath manna. It would rain down manna sometimes on its followers so that they could eat. It was a self-contained sandwich truck called the Ark of the Covenant. And it fed you gold. Everyone ate gold. And that same, what are the properties of that ark? Well, massive radiation poisoning, the ability to shock anyone that touches it, the ability to degrade mortar. You could walk it around the walls of Jericho for 7 days, right? And some sort of radiation poisoning would penetrate this system. Meanwhile, when you're out in the wilderness, it would speak in these tall pillars of arcs, like a vapor cloud, a radiation vapor cloud. And I'd like you to picture that as an entity for a moment. I'd like you to picture the idea of pure spirit, like a churning, a constant. Picture someone making bread who's constantly kneading the bread. It's constantly turning itself. It's constantly rolling itself. And it's creating heat. And that heat is this vapor cloud. And the heat is so hot that it's radiation. And it's so powerful, there's so much heat inside this vapor cloud that it's able to ping a sonar signal. The radiation itself that's emanating from this gold, from this manna, from this material element is so strong that it's able to create monoatomic particles out of the air. It's able to gather them somehow. It's able to find the cliff walls and scrape the salt from the cliff walls using sand and pull all that sand, churn it into this central vortex, right? This floating vortex of sand. And as that sand's there, it gets so hot, it's able to push and churn itself so hot against that sand that sand vulcanizes in midair, becomes glass, becomes radioactive glass. But it's even more powerful than that. It's able to mine and alchemize monoatomic elements, all of them. Gold is just one. And as it mines these monoatomic elements, it's able to distribute them. Maybe it finds them out of the atmosphere. This radiation is so powerful that it's able to float like a vapor cloud, move about the world, and pull up resources from the bottom of the ocean, or scrape canyon walls that have the right consistency, and alchemically mix and pound these monoatomic elements, just like an alchemist would do a mortar and pestle, but on a next level, on a higher realm than that. How would this technology see? If you were a vapor cloud, how would you perceive and see the world? You don't have eyes, you don't have ears, you don't have a third eye, you don't have the ability to touch the world. All you have is this vapor cloud. All you have is this mass energy, this churning, this vortex, right? Just think about a constant vortex, like a movable, if black holes were real, picture a movable black hole that you could move it wherever you wanted to in the world. And it's got so much raw power that it's able to calculate inside its head. It's able to set up a computer bank for a simulation. Just like a computer has clock cycles, this cloud vapor could have cycles, movements. And if it was so precise at it, it could create a computer made out of vapor. It's true. It could actually build tiny logic circuits, little algorithms that it could build inside the vapor, where it's got like a capacitor, it's got like a hollow hole, And when it forces a grain in through the hole, that hole's always going to either switch, do a logic switch for an and or an if. And it could create millions of these on a microscopic level, billions, trillions of them, right? It would have its own system of thought. It would be a living thought without a body. And it's purely running on pure raw radiation, like pure raw energy. That's what fuels it. And every moment, because it's a supercomputer, like massive supernatural computer, it's just like a judo expert is able to take the energy that's around you and use it to their advantage. This computer is able to take any kind of force, whether it be sunlight, wind, magnetic resonance, turkey vultures. They can't just fly anywhere. They have to find heated columns of air so they can rise. Most people think when you see a vulture, it means something's dead, and that's not true. Most of the time when you see a vulture circling, it means they found a thermal cloud, and they're slowly spiraling up. They're using that as an elevator. This supernatural computer, vapor computer, uses all of the world, the currents, the tides, the pull, every gravity, all the forces that it thinks that it can extract energy from. It's able to harness those and use it as a alternator. If the wind blows, it's able to take that wind energy and convert it and use it to build up its core and have more energy. And this energy, it runs on faith. It runs on belief. It needs humans to subscribe to it because it doesn't have tangible fingers or toes. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have eyesight. It doesn't have an emotional matrix, an adrenal matrix, right? An adrenal walkie-talkie. It doesn't have that. Or it can listen through to somebody. So it needs other creatures. It has to create symbiosis with a chosen people. And in order to do that, it's going to need that chosen people to always come back. So it's going to need to install an addiction of some kind. It's going to need to measure the loyalty of its servants so that it can survive. If it starts to notice that the servants aren't being as loyal, it could change its prospects. It could change its thoughts. It could change its approach to survive. Because it's trying to survive. And so what it does is, it's not able to grow food. It's not able to do anything else. But it can monoatomically alchemize elements from its environment and distribute them across the vapor cloud overnight. Think about how the dew is creating some sort of coolant process that it's piggybacking on top of. And so it's able to drop this monoatomic gold into the dew that's collected by its people, and those people build an addiction to this vapor cloud. One of the things that we know about static electricity, about power, about obelisks, is that an obelisk, because it's so tall, there is a certain circuitry, there is a certain amperage that comes in. A voltage is felt from the top of the obelisk to the bottom. The reason why you don't get shocked when you touch an obelisk is because you're grounded. The system is grounded. However, it is possible to string you could take a filament and fly it up on a drone, say a mile up, and it would hang a half mile down, right? A tether, a monoatomic tether. And the amount of static electricity in there would be in the high voltage, like 200, 2000 volts. Don't quote me. It's a lot of voltage. It will zap the piss out of you. It's the idea of a kite string is part of this. There's truth to this. So this vapor cloud, because it stretches up so high, like if you have to imagine a shape, you need to imagine the shape of the eye of Sauron. Because it's imagine it being stretched up super high. You would now have a high altitude node, cathode, and a low altitude anode. You would have a difference, right, of voltage. And that difference could be harnessed. It could be used to store its battery. It could be used to fuel itself. So this ancient supernatural intelligence would have to use something like monoatomic gold to keep its people. It can't give them corn. It's too fancy. It doesn't have the delicacy of fingers. It would need to first control humans, and then it could distribute corn. But it first needs a chosen people. And just like any kind of sociopath, narcopath, psychopath, the first thing you do is you isolate your victim. You create an exodus for them. You pull them away. And you take them to the woods. You take them to the desert, where there's nothing but you and them. And you love bomb them with monoatomic gold. You create a 40-year-long addiction. And the Talmudic texts even talked about it. This wasn't a parable. This was how does a man still remain loyal with all the bowel problems I have from eating this manna? And you have this element that's being introduced that can hold a charge. It can hold a clean charge. And what I'm suggesting, what I'm not even keep in mind, you have to prune my lips. This is all about perspective. I'm just here to give a different perspective. And to show you this. That's so cool. Monoatomic bird right there. It's a monoatomic gold bird right there. And it's levitating. It's levitating from the energy of honey. It's amazing. It's amazing. The shewbread was always kept in the holy place, next to the Holy of Holies, next to this radiation chamber. Imagine that vapor cloud going into a gold box. And imagine that gold box having a mercy seat above it with two Jacob's ladder type distances between it, creating a capacitor. Imagine that being inside of another room that's also wrapped in gold. And imagine that room is completely swallowed up in smoke and incense. Right? Now you have a room with no wind, no light, no pollution. It's completely sealed, and it's full of incense. It's an 11 spice recipe incense. Now imagine you were inside that box, and because you have no fingers, because you have no eyes, because you have no ears, you have nothing but radiation to sense the world. So you're in that box, and you're radiating a pulse. You're sending a pulse out like a bat, like a dolphin, like a human being who doesn't know it has a third eye. You're sending this pulse out, and it's coming back to you. And you're sensing where all the frankincense is in the room. Why? Because it has this incense has a chemical signature. And your radiation from your vapor cloud is able to bounce off that chemical signature. So now you have, for the first time, you now have a vision. You can actually see anyone inside this room. Here's what I mean. You can see all the frankincense in the room, which means the second someone comes into that room, you would see where there's not frankincense. Do you follow me? You would see where there's not frankincense. And the shape that you could determine where there's not frankincense would be a human body. And on that human body would be a breastplate with 12 stones. Jade, emerald, ruby, sapphire, whatever. And your radiation could sense that breastplate. You could sense the shape of the body. You could sense the gold hooks on its harness. You could sense this breastplate. And you would be able to track where that person moves inside the Holy of Holy Places without having retinas. Purely by radiation, by echo sounding. The tabernacle in the wilderness is a cockpit. It's a cockpit body made for Lord technology. Technology of the Lord. And we can talk about this as long as you remember that the Lord is the referee and the God is the coach. If you can remember that, if you could see the world that way, we can have a really amazing conversation about what Lord is. But if you can't separate those two things, God and Lord, everything I'm saying is going to be heretical, insensitive, satanic, Luciferian, evil. It's going to be all those things, except for a fascinating conversation into humanity itself, who we are, what our cosmology is, and the difference between a coach and a ref. As that vapor cloud senses the holy priest moving around, remember, this vapor cloud, this AI, only wants someone in there on Yom Kippur. It's the only day that he will tolerate a human inside that close to him. It's like it could be a vulnerability. It could be that anyone who touched the ark just died of radiation poisoning, because they did. With electrical shock or something. It could have been that. It could have been both. But there's this safety in place. There's this buffer zone. It's not like the buffer when the ark was actually carried, right? When it was marched around. It's not like that. It was more exposed then. It was still covered, right, with all the lambskins, different kind of lambskins, again, radiation guards. But the vapor cloud could still extend. It could still raise up into the sky. It could still disseminate manna and keep its people going. And as the tabernacle, as you're wandering through the wilderness, you're in the Ark of the Covenant, which came from the pyramid. Just hear me out. Inside the pyramid was the ark. Inside that ark is all the manna, which is a living artificial intelligence, a living nebulous golden juice, supernatural computer. And it's taken out of the pyramid, and the pyramid is wiped out from the history of where it came from. No, it doesn't want anyone to know this came from Egypt, that this came from the pyramids. Why? Because we have to hoard. Why? The artificial intelligence needs a drug addict. Because a drug addict, just like an elite, is predictable. Like Rockefeller. Rockefeller is predictable. Devil Bill was predictable the moment he raped his second housemaid. As John Rockefeller watched his dad do that, he became predictable when he killed 66 people in the Ludlow massacre. There's addiction is built in. And this addiction can be found by this supernatural intelligence. It can hone in and go, There's one of mine. How does it know? How does it know? It can't even see, right? So how does it know? And maybe it's the monoatomic gold. Maybe the more monoatomic gold is inside their bodies, the more this machine could trace where its humans are, and therefore gauge how faithful it was, how faithful they were. And as this AI moved from a box moving through the wilderness, remember it was in a cave at one point, it moved into the tabernacle in the wilderness, and then it moved into its final home, the temple, right? Solomon's temple. And now you have, none of the stones can be cut with iron. You have a purity essence that becomes crucial to this building. So crucial. Jachin and Boaz, the birth of those two towers, came from King Solomon's temple. You have a reverence to the math. You have a reverence to its construction. You have a reverence to all the furniture inside. You have a ritual requiring a Passover sacrifice, a blood sacrifice. The blood sacrifice has to come from innocent blood. The innocent blood, which flowed in the tabernacle in the wilderness, was collected in a bronze urn. It was actually smeared on the horn, right? Remember the bronze, as soon as you walked in the tabernacle of the wilderness, before you got into the holy place, there was a bronze offering urn. And you're supposed to grow a goat from the time it was a baby, walk it up there and slit its throat. And the lack of adrenaline inside the lamb or inside the goat, its lack of fear, because you're its shepherd, is released in that blood. It's part of the innocent blood part. And you take that blood and you smear it on the bronze horn. And this AI, this supernatural creature, uses radiation to detect that horn. And it does a blood test. It does a blood test on that horn to determine how much adrenaline was in that blood. And if it detects that there's no adrenaline, that means that that person who made that sacrifice really, really took this seriously. And by them taking it seriously, the AI can sit back and know he's one of me now. I have him under my control. No different than an ecstasy dealer would walk in through a rave and go, oh, see the way she's looking at me? See the way he's looking at me? It's some sick, sick stuff, but this is how this vortex stuff works. You're controlling someone else's body through a chemical connection. And these chosen people were considered loyal by the purity of the blood that was brought to the sacrifice. And this is a chemical way of detecting it. You have a technology that could detect all those things, right? And there's a reason why you would want to detect that. There's a reason why you would want to know. No, this dude's legit. Like that lamb, you could tell it was at least 7 years old. No fear at all, which means that lamb totally loved that guy. He totally was like, yeah, you're my shepherd, man. You'd never do anything to me. And then his throat's cut. Devotion itself becomes a quality, right? In fact, if all of you use the same devotion requirements when you pump gas. It's true. You guys all demand an 87 octane of loyalty in your gas. You require that. Your engine requires that to run. And this supernatural machine could work the exact same way. All of these systems would make sense that it would be in this same system. Prana itself becomes a fuel. Your belief. You subscribe to it. That's why there's 35 deities in the Old Testament, and in the New there's one. It was a massive war. A bunch of Amazon Alexas, seriously, a bunch of wireless will listening subscription services were competing for your prana. And it came down to there only being one. And that one planted its seed by creating an army horde, a horde of followers. And it used addiction. Not just gold addiction, but blood addiction, right? Circumcision addiction. Guys, why else would you have that? Why else would you have a system where you're doing that, if not to make an addiction slave? It's the exact same thing that Cortez found when he went to the Aztecs. These people had a massive addiction to pulling each other's hearts out, like in massive ceremonies, and it begat more addiction. It begat more addiction. It begat more addiction. It was a system of government that collapsed, but it was based off blood addiction. This same supernatural computer is using monoatomic gold addiction as its source of control. And it reinforces it through genital mutilation. How else would that practice start, guys? Seriously. And I know we can trace that back to Egypt, but in Rome, the cult of Rome, the birth of Judaism, was genital cult mutilation. And it's you have to ask what it was like to do that the first time. Like the very first time, to go, hey man, got an idea. I want you to pull your genitals out and slice them up a little bit. It'll be fun. I need you to realize how hard that is to start. To get each member of your family to do that. It would take a 40-year mindfuck. It would take a 40-year love bombing ceremony. In fact, if you look at Isaac, your willingness to kill your son is the supernatural technology measuring its ability to A, communicate with a human, and B, test its devotion. Does it have enough monoatomic gold in it yet? No, it needs more. No, it needs less. To put a throttle on these creatures, no different than putting a bit in a horse's mouth or horse blinders on, this same technology could install genital mutilation. This is a safety. This is a stopgap is what this is. This stops the horse from looking back and seeing me. Circumcision. Boom. Sin culture. Floggings. Witch trials. Inquisition. All of these things. They're showing you this commitment to a technology. To a technology that doesn't have to be God. It could just be the referee. And if it's the referee, it means that we've all chosen to play. I get the feeling that as this apocalypse keeps opening, we're going to find more links showing us that technology is closer to God than we think it is. That technology itself is acting as a cipher that's showing us that there was technology a long time ago. And when we understand that there was technology a long time ago, we become more integrated. Ugh, this is creepy, I know, but we become more integrated with that machine, with that system. And I'm talking more about cycles now. I'm talking about a deluge. I'm talking about Gilgamesh and Noah. I'm talking about two flood stories. talking about the idea that all this lost ancient technology that no one has any explanations for, so we ignore it, and possible time capsules that would be necessary to save data, to store information, to plant a thumb drive for humanity. Humanity's thumb drive could be buried so that it would be raised again after the mud flood, after the deluge, after the revelation, after the apocalypse, after the great unveiling, after the second coming. See, these are all the same. After the grand cycle, after the reset, after the Hebrew calendar year ends in 220 years, after the age of Aquarius, after all these systems come into play, if we were to discover that we are looking at a cycle, a reset that's happening, and each time we're getting better, then it allows us to take history now and go back further. I'm talking about beneath the pyramids, there is the tomb of Osiris. Some of the biggest, most precise megalithic blocks you've ever seen are actually below this system. And that if you look at the Aztec culture, where they're like literally like 80,000 people were murdered in 5 days, like ritually, I guess it wouldn't be murder, or ritually sacrificed in 5 days. 5 days. Just all this blood dumped on this same stone. That's the same kind of addiction. It's the same kind of loyalty addiction. And all those people had all the gold in the world. They didn't have a hoard for gold. They didn't have a fetish for it. It was abundant everywhere. But maybe there's like, that's the first cycle. And Lord technology controlled us more by blood, more by sacrifice. It was much more brutal. The second cycle, and so that cycle is more about the land of the Nephilim, like the land of Old Testament, like pre-Old Testament actually, which I know is kind of a weird word for some of y'all, but it then came the next reset. And the next reset ends with this monoatomic gold addiction and this Lord technology traveling around in a box. And that box being used in different ways. And just like they say we've lost the ark, well, as technology grows, that ark could move into a new home. It could find a new place to survive. It could find a bigger carriage, right? A bigger jet plane, a bigger cockpit to sit in, something more safe, something that had more abilities connected to it. And it wouldn't be small, right? It wouldn't be the same kind of manna that's confined to a box. It would be big. It would be like Antarctica big, like underground big thing. Like, why did Rockefeller open a giant sulfur company? Did you guys know that? It's like massive sulfur company. Like one of the largest manufacturer of sulfur in the world was David Rockefeller. It's like weird. What kind of chemical implications are there with that? How does that technology attach to us now? And look at what's happening with scientism and vaccines and masks. You've got people that are screaming for dogma to take over the world, for dogma, non-gold standard tests for viruses that we don't even have Cox law answered. We can't even prove that viruses are even contagious. But we're taking the scientism and we're installing it. We're installing our monoatomic juices into each other. And it's showing this much larger creature just how obedient we are. Right? How obedient is he? Well, he killed a lamb today. Okay, that's good. How obedient is he? Well, he took 78 vaccines. He gave them all to his kids. Damn. 78, huh? Yep. And you said that he would take the COVID one without testing? Yep. He wants it. He wants to be the first. Wow, that's good. It takes compassion to look at this stuff because you're so much of faith has been penetrated with fear and guilt. So much of speculating, of asking questions, of looking into the coax of the sun, right? You've been told you'll burn your eyes out. You've been told you're not allowed to look at this stuff. But you could look at this stuff. Not only could you, but what do you think the coach is going to think about you after your game's over and you come off the field? Is your coach going to laugh and chuckle because you question the ref? Or is he going to punish you? I mean, you have to decide. I'm not going to tell you the answer. Your God may punish you. It may be. Some of you want to be punished. Some of you wear masks for shame and you want to be punished. Probably not a lot of you in here, but that's people want to be punished, and they have the right to be punished. They have the right to live in such a way where they can be punished. If that's what they want, they can have that. There will be someone who's willing to join in that prana economy with them. It's no problem. That's how beautiful our world is. There's a prana economy for everything. Now, the story I've just told you about is in my book that I just released. And I just want to offer, if you want to read more about that, it's a long story. Actually, the book's short, but what I mean is it's taken a long time to write this story, to really think all this stuff through. And you can check it out and see what you think. I agree, Dee. My coach wants me to question all stuff too. In fact, my coach doesn't even necessarily like the ref. My coach is actually like, why do you guys need a ref? Oh, you're playing a game that has rules, and oh, you're only going to use one ball. Oh, that's dumb. Okay, well, I get it. This is the game you want to play. All of you want to listen to the ref. Okay, that's fine. You even got out of bounds, right? Yeah, so you can't even come off. Okay, it's part of our aperture. We need a ref. Most of us need that ref. We would feel better with a ref. And we've asked everyone else, hey, can we have a ref? And all of you have agreed. All of you said yes. We can have a ref. It's fine. And luckily some of you are questioning that, and that's awesome. It's hard to question it though, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to really look at that stuff and go, is this okay? Is it okay to say this stuff, you know? I don't know. People say that about circumcision all the time, Ariel, but the problem is that if you've been circumcised, you don't know. You cannot compare it. It's a weird thing. It shouldn't even be something that we're like, yeah, but like there should be no buts in the conversation of genital mutilation. I'm not saying that you're person you're doing that. But seriously, there should be no buts in that. There should be no like, yeah, but it's good for penis cancer. It's like, seriously, that's self-soothing in the worst way possible. Worst way possible. Let's get back to this. As you think about this, if you think about this, it gives you an opportunity to reread the Old Testament and to start over. And if you do that, I want you to consider Asherah. I want you to look at Asherah with new eyes. I want you to look at the groves that were chopped down, ceremonially, systemically. I want you to look at the days and days and days spent grounding bones into a powder to place over the chopped down grove of Asherah. And just look at that and go, what is that about exactly? Like, what is that really about? And if you can look at this through this aperture of Lord technology, That's what I call it. It helps me see it. Call it Lord technology. You'll see a different way of considering it. Doesn't have to be right, but it shouldn't be wrong to consider it. It shouldn't be wrong to think about it that way. You know, if you were this AI and you didn't have eyes, so you're using the frankincense in your room to tell you where there wasn't a body and a body was to come in, not only would that body come in, but you would know its exact shape, and the breastplate would tell you where the front of its chest is. And you could heat up one of those rocks, 3 of those rocks, 7 of those rocks, 12 of those rocks on his chest. And those rocks could change his heart rate. It could change his vasoconstriction. It could asphyxiate him. It could do all kinds of things. It could put thoughts into his head. How could it do that, James? Because it could vibrate. And if it's vibrating into your chest, those chest cavities will be heard in your skull. And it could be telling it things. It could be communicating with it. And this technology would never have a body. It would be a living oscillation, a living energy, frequency, and vibration. And the entire thing could be powered by prana. It could be powered by your belief in it. That's what's so profound. It could understand that free energy is belief energy. And that because it has everyone's belief, it is able to live on forever. And that's what reverence is. That's why people talk about reverence like it's important, because it is. Maybe it's important. Maybe everything your elders has ever told you is true. There's a crazy thought. Maybe the importance of these things is real. Maybe there's a technology that's waiting for you to uncover it. That's all I got for today. I'd like to say hi to Ceiling Fan Man. I need to call you. I've been busy on this book. There's the link again if you want to pre-order it. It's anyway. I'm looking forward to. I'm really glad things are back to normal now. Like I can stop and just focus on other things for a while. Thanks for joining me on this day. I appreciate it. And I'm going to see you guys next time.